So this is productivity tips for POs, but I assume anyone can take advantage of these tips. We're going to talk about tools. I'm going to be quick and talk about schedule messages and why that's a good tip, obviously. Accessibility Insights Web, it's a plugin for checking for web accessibility. Kathleen will talk about Miro, which is cool, although I have a lot of problems using it, but that's because I'm just old school. And then Anne-Marie's going to talk about keeping your backlog clean with Jira filters, which I consider kind of a preview to some of her presentation with Anne about Jira. Checklist for Miss Julie, and then Harry is going to talk about prioritizing features and development. If time permits, I will talk about using SIGs, our SIG meetings for collaborative UAT, and a bonus tip, which I'm probably not going to talk about, but I just want to say it is okay to schedule offline time. and
block it on your calendar.
Yeah, block it on your calendar too. Exactly.
Are you actually going to get to that as a particular topic?
If we got time.
Okay.
Each person has 7 minutes to present, so it's kind of like a pachaka kind of thing. And you'll get a 2-minute warning by the timekeeper, who is Joe. I know folks on Zoom don't know Joe or see Joe, but Joe will give a warning. He'll throw out the 2 when you only have 2 minutes left. And Joe, what happens when you go over time? Thank you. Yeah, and a timeout signal for those who are familiar with football and other things. And at the end, if we have time, we'll save it for questions. And so I'm going to start first because I think this should take 7 minutes, I hope. Timer on. Okay. Schedule messages. I think this is really important because we're in a global community. And sometimes when I send a message at 5 p.m. my time and I have a team that's based in Ukraine or wherever, or I'm communicating with Julie or someone, it might be disruptive to send an email or a message or Slack 5 p.m. my time when it's someone's evening. So I like to schedule messages because of that. That's one reason. Also allows me time to reflect before I send that message, because maybe maybe I was tired or cranky, to be blunt. Maybe I need a little time before I actually send that message. Also, reminders, because sometimes I'm in the mode, I'm thinking about, the event or the message. And if I know I need to send, I send it now. But I know I'm thinking about it now, I can just send it, schedule it, and it's there. I also use it for reminders. If for the product tips meeting, I sent several reminders to the PO's channel. Hey, who wants to present? Who wants to present? I just scheduled those messages so I didn't have to think about it. And this is just examples of some of the options in Outlook and in Slack. You can also use it in Teams. Teams also has a schedule later message too. It's just the UX is not great, but it works.
So when I get a message from you at like 3 a.m. and I'm thinking, oh man, Leela's just
It's for some of the Monday messages that you get from me at 8 a.m. are definitely scheduled. Yeah.
For Slack, where do you get to it?
Yeah, you just right click and you get the message here, and then you see later today or Monday, they're the defaults, and then custom time. Yeah.
I had no idea you could do this.
Mm-hmm. So that's schedule messages. I'm going to the next one, Joe. This works?
It did previously.
Oh, okay. Time on it. All right, next one, and then I'll hand it off to Kathleen, is Accessibility Insights Web. It's a Chrome plugin that I actually have used for many years to check for accessibility. And what I like about it is that since it's a Chrome plugin, this is what it looks like. You open it up, and then you can decide what kind of checks that you want. And for product owners, an automated check is really good to do. Just check it, and it'll actually highlight what the problems are. Another one that's good for POs is tab stops. As you know, one of the big complaints or pain points, maybe that's a better word, is keyboard navigation. So using tab stops will allow you to see how folks are getting to certain things. One time I did this to see how long it takes a librarian to use the keyboard to go from the search pane to the results list. And it took like 40 tabs. So now is a requirement to say, when you hit search, just shift over to the results list. Maybe it gives you a reason to create a keyboard shortcut too, possibly. So tab stops are good. Headings are also good too. That's a way that screen readers navigate parts of the web, that page. Headings should be good for most apps, but if you're doing a new app, it's probably good to check the headings and see that they've actually implemented H1s and H2s as ways for a screen reader to navigate through that page. So I like it, it's powerful. It's powered by the same tool, DQAX, that we use for checking for accessibility. So some dev teams have automated accessibility tests run, and they're using DQAX. So it's all powered by the same thing. This is something that's, I think, open source that was shared by Microsoft too, this plugin too. What's also great about this tool is that, again, when you run it, you get highlights of the issues. This is from the Versa report refactor. Tom knows of this, the Team Bama team. So I did this check, and I saw that for several of their drop-down fields, they have issues. And so you get it's highlighted, and when you click on it, it actually will provide details that you can then put into the JIRA. So I don't have to think about what am I supposed to say to fix this. I just copy and paste what's under, when you click on that I, it gives you all the details, or the exclamation mark. When I click on that, it's going to give me all the details that I can then add into the JIRA so that the development team, not to pick on Team Bama, knows what to do to fix the issue. So that's the other tool. And Julie, do you have a question?
Yeah, just on the slide before, there was landmarks.
Mm-hmm.
What's a landmark?
Yeah, so landmarks are tied to ARIA, and ARIA is kind of a code. It's code language that developers use for screen readers.
Right.
So I don't pay too much attention to that because I just know what ARIA means, and that's about it. Any other questions? All right. Miro it is. All right, 1 second. We're gonna give Kathleen a minute to set up.
All right.
Do you want to use the mic, or do you want to use the
I'm fine either way. How do I here?
Oh, it's already
but
sure
it's not showing here.
Oh, okay, hang on. 1 second. I'm not sure if I can give you. Oh, there's where are the, can I see the details?
Can you do alt tab?
No, it doesn't allow for sharing. I gotta put in the host. Claim host. All right, 1 minute 330-176. All right.
Room 701 is almost.
Hang on for a minute. I keep hitting the wrong button because this doggone mouse. All right, so close. So you're sharing your screen, right?
Yep. You can see it on Zoom. Just see it here.
Yeah. That's really weird. Hang on.
Good.
Oh, you know what I think it is? It's this.
There you go.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
Never mind. Wasn't the host key. Okay, go ahead.
All right.
You're gonna space it there. Laptop off. All right, do you want the lavalier?
I think not.
All right, can you hear me in this thing?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Hopefully you can also hear online. Let me just move this a little bit out of the way. So I'm going to talk about Miro, and if Miro is something that you're not familiar with, it is fantastic. It's an online collaborative whiteboarding tool, and it's free to use, but there are paid or enterprise options. It is fantastic, and I use it all the time for a huge variety of things, from retros with the team, trying to document flows or user journeys. It integrates with Jira and other software. You can use it for like this sort of landing screen for Miro, product development workflows, workshops, and async collaboration. That's actually one of the best things about it, is that you can share a link to a Miro board, and people can go into it at another time. You can leave each other notes, comments, you can tag each other in it. So you don't have to be doing it at the same time, but it is super user-friendly when you are doing it at the same time. Diagramming, process mapping, there's a lot of really great stuff that you can do with Miro. They also have some really great help and tutorials. They've got some quick videos that are nice for getting you started if you feel stuck. And so I'm just going to pull up a couple of Miro boards to give an idea. So like this was just using sticky notes in Miro to sort of organize thoughts and ideas and group them together. And so multiple people can come in here and collaborate, move things around. When more than one person is on a board, you can see their cursor, you can see their items moving in real time. Multiple people can add or edit. So if you wanted to add a sticky note or adjust it or change the color, all of that kind of stuff is super easy. Another thing that I love about Miro is that you're not constrained to any size. And I traditionally was very much a paper person. I like to draw things out or whiteboard and see it physically. And it can be really frustrating when you're drawing something out and you realize you need to go in another direction and you're out of paper or you're out of board. Miro, you can go in any direction, but then reframe it, move it around. And so this is an example of a board when we were working on the data import task force to sort of organize feedback when we talked about data import experience with large files. Was able to create these like little cards and sort of quickly tag and color code to get themes of the various topics that came out in those interviews. And it's just sort of a nice way to sort of quickly be able to look at what that feedback was. And then next to that, one of my favorite things when learning about something new, especially when it's something that's somewhat complicated, I like to talk to subject matter experts and sort of learn about whatever it is as much as I can. And then I tend to draw flows or a process of what I think it is. And then I bring it back to them and ask questions like, what did I get wrong? Is this right? Does this happen here? Does this happen there? It's a lot easier to have something in front of you that you're looking at to say, oh, no, that's not what happens here. It actually happens here. Or, oh, look, I forgot about this thing. And it's a nice thing to have a conversation about. And then you can leave these little sticky notes as well that you can move around. I'm gonna hop over to this other board. This particular one is a little bit messy, but it shows the integration with Jira, which is super nice. And so you can pull cards in from Jira that are either stories, features, or defects. You can do it in bulk to automatically pull in a lot of these cards. Or you can take the URL from Jira, copy it, and paste it in, and it'll automatically create the card for you. And then you can customize the card. And then when you click on it, what it'll do is it'll actually connect to the Jira, and it'll tell you more information about that, so that you can see, all of the information, and you can go out to the actual JIRA if you want to. So it's super handy for being able to pull in and visualize JIRA content in a different way. This is one where I was trying to understand something that I thought was fairly simple in a different way. And then through conversation, it became very clear that it was not simple. And so I was talking to the architect, and I was trying to understand what was happening, and sort of quickly went to Miro and was able to, like, even though there's a ton of little circles, that was just using the duplicate tool. And so it didn't take long, and I was able to work through, what was happening, what wasn't happening. And I was able to understand at a much different level, sort of what was happening. And I think having the visual layer was really helpful in that. I think that's the quick and dirty on Miro. If you haven't used it, I highly recommend it. It is wonderful.
Next, or just Julie? Either one. Do you want to go?
Yeah, I can go.
Can people hear me? Yeah, I think so. Cool. I don't have anything to show, so people could then deal with the background in the meantime. Yeah, I have just a little spiel on checklists, right? I'm reading my notes to my phone. I'm not being impolite or anything. I'm probably preaching to the choir when I'm looking at people here in the room online. But I find checklists so great and so helpful that I will preach as often as I'm allowed to do so on them. For me, the biggest gain of using checklists is that I don't have to spend brain power thinking about what I've got to do. I don't have to waste emotional energy worrying that I've forgotten something, because here's the checklist. All I have to do is go through it. If you're interested in some checklists we have for the POs in the Folio project, we do have a couple. One's for the release, it's the release readiness checklist. And there's another one for performance and scalability requirements overview and checklist. So those exist. But here, because it's not just for POs, all kinds of checklists rule guide my life. In my project, for my project management work, in one of the old frameworks, there's these 10 knowledge areas of project management, and I go through them every single time at the beginning when I'm thinking of my plan, what I want to achieve, so that I often don't use half of them, but I make sure that, okay, I've thought about that aspect and I have proactively ruled it out, or, okay, I do have to think about this aspect. I would not have thought of procurement had I not had this list. For all my meetings, I use the 6 W's for all of them, as big as small, because I know that if I forget one of them, my meeting's not going to be a success, right? Even for like traveling, I have a mental checklist of 4 things that I need to know where they are at all times. I can live without the rest, even if I lose my luggage or someone else loses my luggage. I'll manage because I have these 4 things handy, and then I can then concentrate on other things. Now, yes, you do got to prepare your checklist, right? That can take some time up front, but I feel once you have a standard checklist for your work generally, or for the smallest of tasks, it frees up my mind, it frees up my brain power, so that I can focus on I call them unexpected devilish details that hide between the bullet points. And I think that's where the value is of our knowledge work generally. It's not about going through the checklist. It's about finding time to dealing with what hides between the bullet points, and be it for solving problems, the devilish details that appear, but also it gives me a framework within. I feel like the bullet points are like these pillars, and I can be creative within those pillars if I have time, if it falls for it, accordingly. And checklists give me structure, and then I can be free to step away from the structure if I feel that is necessary or of value. So yeah, that was it, my little spiel. So if you haven't already, I encourage you to embrace the liberating power of the checklist.
What kind of tools do you use for your checklists? Are you paper, digital?
Oh, that's a very good point. A variety. I'm trying to think through what I have. I try and digitize them as much as possible, because I try and make my work as available to many other people as possible. So that if I win the lottery, someone can come up and complete my checklist when I'm no longer around. I must admit, typically I start with paper, but it ends up online, and then I adapt to whichever. I use various tools. I try and keep it as simple as possible. Is essentially it, depending on what tool, be it OneNote, be it sometimes a checklist is more like, here are the different documents you have to go through in a folder. I'm fairly flexible, and I embrace many faiths for how my checklists can look like. Okay, thank you. Oh, yeah. Over to the next person.
All right. Oh, I can't see. There. All right. Is that working? Yes. I figure if checklists are good enough for airline pilots and operating rooms, they are good enough for us. So, things where you need to not forget. All right. So, I'm not sure I will ever master Miro, but I feel like when it comes to JIRA, and especially labels in JIRA, I know what I'm doing. So I have a list of the that I just want to, I'm not going to go through every one of these links, I swear, but I just wanted to show you some of the things that we're doing to keep FoliJet organized. And I'm sure every product owner that's working with a dev team has a list of their features. And so this is our Poppy feature list. One of the things I've done with this is make sure that they're in PO rank order descending. So the most important are at the top, and then the least important are at the bottom, but they're all important. And the first two are the ones that were the early Poppy, which was the multiples work. The next few are the consortial work. Thank you, Dennis. And then we have a bunch of standing ones that go from release to release, that we just create a new feature every release that continues the one from previously. So it covers things like bugs and the releases and the many, many FATs that show up every time. So this is helpful, but the thing that I find challenging about looking at an individual feature and looking at a list like this is that it's hard to tell how much work is left in a particular feature. And so we also have a dashboard that I've put in the same order, and it shows us how many of each type of issue we have in each feature and what status are they in. And then I color code, because green means we're in good shape, we're not done. Orange means it's coming along. Red means we're not in good shape, and blue means we're done. And particularly for really big ones like bugs, it's really helpful to see right now there's overall about 103 in the bugs feature, 70 are closed. So we're in decent shape. We know there's going to be some more that show up. But when I'm looking at this, if I had 30 bugs done out of 103, all right, what are we moving to Quesnalia? What can we deprioritize? We have to look at this. There's no way we're going to get through it all. The other thing we've done, I am obsessive about the FATs. Ever since the karate automated issues started showing up and the manual QAs started building FATs so that they can peer review each other, it's just this bloat of FAT stories that are in our teams. And so I've moved them onto a separate feature just to get them out of the way so they don't end up counting in other features. And between the karates and all the manual tests, we have 285. So far, most of those karates close themselves, but I just wanted to have a place to corral them out of the way. And so for me, this can be really helpful. If I have a red at this point in the release, I know we've got problems. The oranges, I kind of pay more attention to than I pay to the greens, and the blues, I don't look at anymore because they're done. So log updates is a good example. This was part of the early part of Poppy. We know there are some bugs here that we're not going to finish. Are we going to move them to Quesnalia? If so, where are we going to put them in Quesnalia? So as we are planning Quesnalia and trying to finish Poppy, this is going to be super important for us. And then my obsessive cleanup. So when I need to just turn off my brain and do random stuff and not have to think too hard, but know that at the end, Jira is going to be in nicer shape than it was, I do cleanups. And I have a whole list of cleanup filters in my favorite filters. And I'm just going to bring up a few of the like 20-ish that I have. And it's basically different ways of carving up the foliage at work and fields that we're supposed to be filling in that we haven't filled in perhaps, so that we can make sure that everything is covered. For me, at least, I like to have every issue in a feature and every feature tied to an epic. And so, and I'm obsessive about bugs falling into the morass. So bugs with no dev team, which sometimes they're mine, like this one. And then Dennis has one that showed up a couple days ago that Thunderjet doesn't know about because Thunderjet's not on it. So we'll get that to Thunderjet and then they'll actually look at it because right now they're not looking at it. So I clean those up every couple days. We have an FAT that closed automatically. We want to make sure that it's got story points of 0. We have data imports that are not linked to features. And so we need to get them linked up to features. And it includes a whole bunch of work that my manual QA has done for tests. We have foliage data import things that are missing epics that we need to get tied to epics. We have things that don't have points and they don't say they need points. So we need to get points on them, or else we need to put need points on them. And if there's no release field, everything should have a release, even if it's to be determined in my world. And then the last thing I want to mention is for the service patches. We've had a lot of service patches for FoliaJet. And so I have a little workflow where I can keep them in order. What are the ones we're still working on? Have we requested approval? Have they been approved? Have they been released? Are they in review? Are they done? And so that helps me find those quickly. And everything that we do in FoliaJet is organized with labels. We have a really good guide to all of our labels. Who assigns them? Can they be taken off or not? All right, I did it.
That's amazing.
All right, Harry, you are next. And
Oh,
oh, 1 second. I have to share the screen. A second.
oh, I didn't share the screen.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
it's all right.
All right. So one of the very few things in this world that I'm actually capable of doing, prioritizing things. So, I can't stand still and talk at the same time. It's a problem. So, within Folio, we've been prioritizing things for quite a long time, right? And so, when we look at our project backlog as a whole, in terms of all the things that are required for Folio, in the past, we've gone to almost like a voting type scheme where people basically cast their lot. Is this feature important to me or not? We've also done a lot of work on the project revolving around which libraries are going live next, because oftentimes they come with a whole pile of features that they feel absolutely positively have to be there or they can't go live. And another one relates to, in a sense, funding in many cases will basically dictate what happens next in terms of priority. But you can also look at it a little differently, right? If a feature can't generate the funding that's required, meaning there's not enough people willing to put money into it, well, is it even important anymore? And those first three, I've got this really rather cryptic project backlog, because really we tend to use these at sort of a high level or oftentimes a mixed level. There's very little detail, and we're trying to make a decision relatively quick and easy here. But then there's sort of another sort of grouping, and these start to get down into a little bit of a lower level when we're talking about an actual development cycle or a program increment, as it might be called. We've got the Poppy release as a program increment, right? And so we have a whole series of things that we want to get done, as Anne Marie just showed us. And so, what are some of the ways we've prioritized those? And when we're looking at it as a product owner or from the product owner perspective, oftentimes there's just plain dependencies. So in a sense, there's a priority that's dictated to us because we don't really have a choice. You've got to get piece A done before you can start piece B, and there's no way to do it any other way, right? Product owners prioritizing based on what is absolutely positively critical. We can't live without it, but I'll get to that in a minute. And then there's oftentimes development team availability as well. Oftentimes there's only particular teams that have a particular skill set. And if that team's working on something, this may be a high priority, but it's going to be delayed. And that's kind of all there is to it. So we're kind of familiar with all of those, right? So I saw the title and I saw a couple of methodologies listed there. I figured it'd be okay if I choose whatever I want to. So hopefully this is okay. So this is one that actually I've used a lot, and it's called WSJF, right? And it's the weighted shortest job first. Basically, jobs are prioritized based on cost of delay, right? And in WSJF, really that total calculation is the cost of delay divided by the job duration. And so as you can guess, the longer this job is, the lower in priority it becomes, because the payoff will tend to be quite low, right? And when we part of this calculation, right, the cost of delay, this is really business value, and I use business value kind of loosely because you could actually be a business and we could be talking financial issues here, but we're often also talking about a user concern here in terms of cost of delay. We are building Folio to cater to librarians' needs. And so what is the cost to that library? And that could also be financial, it could be time, it could be any number of items, right? And to come up with that cost of delay is typically the user or business value. It's a plus the time criticality. And then plus, does this provide an opportunity or enable an opportunity? Or does it help us in terms of risk reduction? Because both of those are oftentimes equally valuable, but in each particular feature, it's typically one or the other. And so we can sum those up and divide it by the cost duration. So normally when this is done, they use a Fibonacci scale in terms of the numbers, right? And so, for example, I have some fake features here, 1 through 3, and just trying to build out this table to help me calculate these, right? So the business or user value here. Well, before I get to that, in each column, including this one, the job size, we have to start with 1 somewhere. Yes. 2 minutes. Oh man, I'm running out of time. Okay, and 1 is the most minimum. It's the smallest it can be. And then what happens is as you start to go through this feature list, they become basically in the Fibonacci sequence, 1, 2, 3, 5, and so on. And so in a sense, these are almost multiples of each other. So this feature has twice the value of this feature, and this one has 3 times the value. The same goes for time criticality, 1, 2, and 3, right? In this case, I totally made it up. Here's your risk and opportunity. We sum them up. And then the job size works the same way. You're going to set a default job size, which is going to be the smallest job, which is going to be 1, and everything else is going to be a multiple of that. And then we do the summation, we divide it, and we end up with this rank. And this is kind of interesting because although, yeah, this had a high value, there was a serious time, it had the minimal time criticality. There was a huge amount of risk here. And, you know, it actually ends up ranking 1, which means it's really low priority. We probably shouldn't do this right now. And then here we've got this one in the middle here, which ends up being 6, which is the highest priority, which is probably the one we should work on next. And in the interest of time here. So I thought I saw Moscow somewhere. Someone used it. Anyway, so really it's Moscow, but it's 4 letters we're really worried about, right? Which is a must-have. There's no point in delivering this solution unless that feature is done. And in this case, you know, it could be due to legal reasons, it could be to safety reasons, and I'm going to run long for a minute, or it's just not viable. There's the should have. It's important, but not vital. It's probably going to be painful if we don't have this feature, but there's probably a workaround. There's a could have, it's wanted and desirable, but not as much as the should have. And then there's the won't haves. We can agree that this won't be needed. And while this one isn't critically important in the prioritization process, it does help in communication because we can clearly articulate, we're going to do this work, and these are the items that we promise you will not be part of what's being released. And also another way to look at this, in many ways, we actually do this all the time, right? When we set up P1, P2, P3, and P4, right? It's almost the exact same thing. But anyway, that's it. I'm done.
Okay, so the tip that I'm going to talk about next is collaborative user acceptance testing. I think some of us have done this, but I've done this quite a bit with the quick mark subgroup. So as I think many of us know, when you set up and plan and organize a user acceptance testing or UAT, it's difficult. One, putting it together is difficult. Then getting people to respond and provide you feedback in a timely fashion is very difficult. Because everyone's busy. So, you know, everyone's juggling 100 million priorities and, you know, it is what it is. So what I tend to do now in some of the quick mark subgroups is just schedule it. Just say we're having user acceptance testing. That's what we do. We do it for every bug fest too, because bug fest is awesome, but you only get one set of feedback. And if I'm going to release something, I want more than one. So I do schedule the UAT during bug fest, and the group quick mark subgroup does. We get together on our Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And this is an example, a screenshot of what we go over. This is the actual UAT. I give them instructions at the top, and then you see all the tasks, and I tell them almost like, anyway, I'm not going to give an example, but I tell them pick whatever task that you want, add your initials, tell me if it passed or failed, and then give me any comments you have. And so again, it works pretty well. I mean, sometimes it's a little awkward because there's silence, but you know, that's because they're testing. And if they have questions, then someone will bring it up and then we'll work through it together, and then everyone learns something. So I think it's a great thing. And if you're worried about, and I think it's very important for POs, especially if you really need that feedback, you're not getting it as quickly as you like, just ask for the time and get them to be there and do it. Yeah, that was it. Yes, Julie.
The steps there, they seem to be very similar to what you put in a test reel
Yeah.
anyway afterwards, right?
Yeah, sometimes I refine it a little bit, because with some of the manual QA, they really get into the nitty gritty, and sometimes I'll just cut off some of the steps, but yeah, for the most part, it's from test rails.
Or like that's part of like the efficiency as well. Like
Yeah.
if you haven't written your test rails back to your basis or
Yeah.
done your test rails, you can use it. It's
Yeah, originally this all came from test. This was what you said, Julie. It was I started here for test rails and then put it in to test rails. But with the manual QA developer QA folks I have on my team, I don't do that now. Now I just update here. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, Dennis.
Do you ask users to create their own accounts for the testing? Or you just get them and use like?
I actually create my own. So for this one, it was just quick month because I wanted to force them to, not force, I wanted to test the permissions. So I don't have them do generic DQ or folio for Bugfest. I create the user account based on the quick mark permissions I want them to test. Anne-Marie?
I do the opposite because I like having who did an import, which you can see if they've got their own log on. If everybody is DQ admin or general import or something, it's tricky to tell what's going on. But what I've done for the most recent one is I set up a permission set, and then I said, when you create your own, use this permission set because I want to check these permissions. And then we had to fix the permission set.
And I've started by creating accounts for my testers and giving them the right permissions for permissions as they go. And then have them log in and start from there.
Oh, that's great too. Yeah, I was lazy and just went with this with the login. But now those are all great ideas to test different flavors of permissions. Yeah.
It also depends on the size.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to create it for.
Yeah. 15. Yeah. Thanks for the support on that one. Yeah. Any other questions about you using a SIG meeting for a collaborative UAT? Dennis.
So you mentioned SIG responded really well. Like, how many folks do you have in a SIG meeting for this?
So for the quick mark subgroup, we have 15. Yeah. And go ahead. Yeah.
Is it hybrid sourcing?
Well, acquisition SIG probably 25 on that.
Yeah, and some, will come for, 15 minutes, say, hey, I have to go, give some feedback. Some of them will come back later or, take the form and just fill it out at a later date. But I've asked the quick mark subgroup, what do you think? You like it? It's okay? They're like, yeah, we like it. It gives us time to really look at it, the functionality when we don't necessarily have the time. Steph? Oh.
I was just gonna, so what's generally the participation? Like how many responses out of 15 do you generally get?
Yeah, that's a good question. From what I've gathered here, so I have like 5 tabs. There's like 5 different sets of tests.
Right.
So for this one, which was on bibs, it looks like, at least for Orchid, we had about 5 folks. But if you go to authorities, it's probably another 5 users and derived functionality. So I guess in total, we probably got about 10 to 12 responses.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
lots.
Yeah.
I participate.
Yeah, Amanda recently did this with bulk edit, and when I spoke to her about it, she said it was great because again, difficulty getting the feedback she needed, used a session to do it, and got some good feedback. Any other questions? Well, that was it, aside from the bonus that I mentioned before. And the bonus is oh shoot, hang on. Let me just go back to this. I think we have plenty of time left. Well, no, we don't. We have 8
10
minutes, 10 minutes. See if we can just go all the way back. Oh. No, you didn't actually. No, this worked out perfectly time-wise, given yeah, so that worked out great. And you almost gave 2 tips, Carrie, if you think about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go with
All right. So the last tip is, hey, schedule some offline time. We all work very crazy schedules and we're always connected. Some of us, are connected to Teams, Slack, Miro, yeah, email and other things. And we're all in lots of meetings and we do a lot of context switching. It's just the nature of what we do as product owners. So just be mindful and just schedule time away from the computer or from Slack. Yes, I said it. Or Teams or an Outlook, and just if you need to focus on something, schedule it, or just again walk away. Sometimes a lot of folks know I do go to Starbucks quite a bit, but I have to take a walk through a park before I can get to Starbucks, and that's actually my time to reflect and think and clear my head a bit. And sometimes that's where my best thinking happens, is when I'm just walking. I'm like, oh yeah, that's it. So that's the bonus tip. Does anybody have any other tips or questions they'd like to share? Steph?
Done is good. If you're, I don't know, maybe it's the nature of what we do, but when you get.
Can you give her a mic?
Oh, hang on.
We've
got that, yeah.
Yeah,
Here,
we got that one.
Done is good. I picked that up from a writer who had hard deadlines, and he's like, sometimes you just have to do done is good. And I think because of the nature of the work that we do, we can get so deep in it and we can just keep wanting to go and go and go, but we can't all the time. So I've got a sticky on one of my monitors that says done is good.
Done is good.
And good enough is okay.
Yeah.
It's not settling. It's-
No, everything we do is an iterative process, so done is good.
And then this isn't quite the same thing, but since you mentioned Slack and the other tools like that, and meetings and so on. I mean, in the past, I've always found, and I think I've said this to many of you, I found that if you can just block 20% of your time each week as just quiet work time. And that could be maybe just blocking out an entire day so you can just sit down and just get through those things you need to get done. Or maybe it's just, a couple hours each morning or whatever the case may be. It's kind of amazing the stuff that you can do, especially when you know that time is coming.
Yeah.
You can actually plan for it a little bit as you think about it throughout the rest of the week and then just
Do
take
it.
advantage of it.
And related to that, as much as I love checklists, I try and actually translate them into time I spend, because having a list doesn't tell me if it's going to take me, like, these 8 items are going to take me an hour or if it's going to take me 2 weeks. So as much as possible, I don't do it too far ahead, but like usually my next week or two, my tasks become meetings in my calendar. Some that aren't important or are not too time dependent, I put as unavailable. So people, if they have to, they know that they can block my time. But others where it's like, I need to prep this and I need to do it now. It looks like a meeting to people who don't know my calendar.
Yeah.
And that has been if not a lifesaver, a time saver over time, and a way to politely, but know my time. These tasks are just as important as what you're reaching out to, and especially now with all the it's not, if you don't call me, I'll still see the task. Right?
Yeah.
And it's actually overall more efficient when I have dedicated time to come to these extra requests than constantly interrupting work that I then end up never getting done.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is all golden and like good reminders and things I want to start doing as well. And I think along the lines of what you're talking about, removing distraction. So you can think in a certain way. Once you get plugged into the community and you have Slack going, and you've got your, you know, whatever your organization is using, Teams or whatever for messaging and your emails. If you are blocking time, which I think is an amazing idea, and I'm trying to do more often. When you block that time, turn the notifications off, remove the distractions from your environment, because having your phone on your desk, seeing notifications destroys your focus. It really does. So
I think that I
important.
cannot stand my phone dinging.
Yeah.
It drives me insane.
Yeah, even if you don't think it's
Right, well, and especially if it's email where it's every 30 seconds or Teams where it's every minute.
Yeah.
The only things I let ding on my one email is messages from my boss.
Joe gave me 2 minutes, but yeah, definitely. I was talking to my brother about this. Embrace the JOMO. Joy of missing out. Yeah, because sometimes my head feels like it's gonna explode with all the information I get, and I gotta shut it down sometimes and just say, it's okay, I don't know all of this.
If it's really important, it's gonna get to you anyway.
It'll get to me anyway, and I'm not expected to be an expert in everything. That's why we have each other. Yeah. So, checklist, I was nodding my head, Julie, because I'm so a fan of it. And there's a great book that I've recommended to a few people called Checklist Manifesto. That it speaks to what you said. So for anybody who's interested in the book, I recommend that, obviously, since I'm saying it. So with that, thank you everybody who presented. And thanks for the folks who are on Zoom, and have a good rest of your conference.